Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Happy Super Tuesday. Go out and vote. I want to talk about hearsay because it ties into a lot of things. It's going to tie into GED Jack, which we'll talk about if I have the time and mental capacity this morning. And it ties into like Winehouse, and it ties into Luck Foyer's misunderstandings. Hearsay is designed to keep out unreliable evidence. It's designed to keep out of court statements that were made out of court. And it does that because those generally tend to be unreliable. They're not made under oath, under penalty of perjury, and they're not made subject to cross-examination. So generally the court wants to keep those out because they're unreliable. There are exceptions to the hearsay rule, and the exceptions are things that tend to make the hearsay more reliable. And one of those things is a statement by a party opponent. And those words are important. Party opponent. So it has to be a statement made by a party to the action. Plaintiff, defendant, petitioner, respondent. It has to be made by a party to the action. And it has to be introduced into evidence by the opponent of the party that said it. So if the plaintiff said it, the defendant can bring it in. However, in a criminal action, if the defendant wants to bring it in, it'd have to be said by the state, and the state didn't say it, the police officer did. And so there is no hearsay exception to allow you to bring in the statement by the officer. Whereas there is an exception to bring in your statement. And the reason why they want to bring in your statement in a criminal proceeding is because, number one, they can say this is true. It was asserted for the truth of the matter. And in order to combat that, you'd really have to either play the whole video, if it's on a video, to try to get context, or to show other indicia of why it's not true, or you got to put the defendant on the stand, which generally speaking you don't want to do. Because, let's face it, a lot of criminals are fucking stupid. And just like cops are good at getting suspects to talk, prosecutors are good at getting the answers they want out of people on the stand. And they're smarter than you are, at least as far as getting those answers. They'll get you to talk. Anyway, how this ties into Winehouse, obviously, in order to get the statements out of the cops who were on the stand and subject to cross-examination. Cross-examination really undermined the case for the arguments because for the argument that the cops are liars and they're terrible people, because the officers could explain why they said what they said. And the jury had the opportunity to hear those explanations and believe the cops, and apparently they did. Now let's talk about GED Jack. First, before we get into GED Jack, I do want to express my condolences for his loss of his dog, and I hope his family finds some comfort in knowing that their dog is out of pain. That said, GED Jack did a stupid thing, and he knew he was doing a stupid thing when he did it. He made a video where he said that, his attorneys always advise him not to talk about ongoing matters, and that's because you're stupid, Jack. But we give that same advice to everybody, but it's double for Jack because he's stupid. But he's got to talk, right? He's got to talk. And then he goes on this spiel about how he could kick any man's ass at the Almost Park Police Department. You put him alone in a room with any other cop and give them 5 minutes, and you could even give them pepper spray and a taser, and they won't be able to put cuffs on him. They won't be able to subdue him to the point where they can put cuffs on him. And you know what? They might actually leave there in cuffs. Jack, you're a fucking idiot. All right, so why is Jack a fucking idiot? Well, he is he is currently facing charges of assault on a police officer, you stupid fuck. And here you are challenging him to fights. His best defense for the assault on the police officer, that headbutt, was that he was in so much pain and he was squealing like a pig. He was in so much pain that it was an involuntary reaction to the pain. That's his best defense. But a man who could kick any other cop's ass is not going to be, I mean, I'm sure that those guys can hurt, but you know, I've seen cage fighters, and they don't squeal in pain like that, Jack. I've seen them punch the walls of the arena with broken arms in frustration, not squeal in pain. Oh, for fuck's sake. So that's going to be a problem for Jack. I mean, if the prosecution decides to go with it, you've got Jack up there doing a tough guy routine, and there's only two ways that they could combat it. And way number one would be to put Jack's dumb ass up on the stand. But Jack is so proud, so arrogant, that he's gonna fuck himself if he goes up on the stand. And I'm sure that Jack's lawyer does not want to put Jack on the stand. Or they try to explain the video by playing it in context. Well, if you look at this video and you look at the previous video that Jack made where he said essentially the same thing. In the previous video, Jack was drunk off his ass. Jack is an alcoholic. Now John, am not saying that Jack is an alcoholic. I'm saying that my defense of Jack, I'm like, Jack's an alcoholic. He sits around drinking all the time. In this video, he says his arm is still in pain. That's when he was drunk and there weren't inhibitions in place. He wasn't trying to be a tough guy, but he's cultivated this tough guy look for YouTube. He wants people to think he's tough. He surrounds himself with indicia of toughness or things that he thinks are tough. Like he's got his little police badge in the corner of the screen. He's got a little police badge on the shirt. He idolizes the police, and he sits around all day playing, what was that, Call of Duty that was paused in the background of the last video? Drinking, playing Call of Duty, grossly overweight, grossly out of shape. I'd introduce his medical records showing his bad shoulders, and I'd be like, absolutely, he's just a loudmouth, lying, arrogant prick who has an ego that it doesn't suit him. He's a 48-year-old, out of shape alcoholic who was just venting his frustration, and he can't actually kick any cop's ass. And the jury might believe that. I think the jury is more likely to believe that than they are to believe that Jack could kick a police officer's ass. But at the end of the day, Jack, you don't do yourself any favors. And one of the issues with 1983 lawsuits, one of the issues that you recover for is damages. And you have your special damages and your general damages. Special damages would be like medical bills, things like that for the harm done to your shoulder. General damages would be like pain and suffering. If you're not in pain and suffering and you're challenging cops for another cage match, apparently you weren't hurt that bad. People can draw inferences from what you say, you stupid fuck. You just shit all over your case. Stop shitting on your case. Shut your stupid gaping pie hole and let your lawyer finish his job with Olmos Park before you talk about it. Dumb fuck. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Oh, and once again, my condolences on your dog, Jack. I truly sympathize with you, and, you know, I hope you find comfort.